Hey everybody, this is Benny Ricciardi with rotocurve.com, and I'm here to give you some of my thoughts on Week 1 NFL DFS football over on DraftKings. The first thing that has jumped out to me, while you're looking for your quarterback, there's two games that I think I'm going to be targeting. The Chicago-Green Bay game has a over-under of 50, and the Atlanta-Philadelphia game has an over-under of 53. Both Chicago and Atlanta are the home teams here, and both home teams are actually the underdogs. The reason I like this is I feel that a team will try a little bit harder in front of their home crowd towards the end of the game to come back if they are down. Since both these teams are underdogs, I'm feeling that both teams are going to be throwing the ball late, trying to get themselves back into the game. Therefore, the two guys who I'm targeting at quarterback are Jay Cutler and Matt Ryan. With Jay Cutler and Matt Ryan, I think you're going to have Matt Ryan be the higher owned of the two because he is going up against Philly. He should see more plays, and that is the Monday night game. So there are a lot of people who like to have that Monday night hammer, that last chance to get a big score. I think the under-the-radar way to play it might be by going with that Chicago team. Now, last year, Alshon Jeffries emerged as the #1 wide receiver for Chicago. They also had Brandon Marshall in town last year. Marshall is no longer on the team, so you got to think that Alshon Jeffries is going to be the guy getting most of those receptions. There's also been some other guys who they brought in who have been injured or banged up, and we're not really sure who the wide receiver 2 is going to be to start the season yet. Therefore, if you look for a combination of Alshon Jeffries and Jay Cutler, you're probably going to get a quarterback who's at a decent ownership level and not too expensive that has a chance for a large upside today, knowing that they're probably going to be trailing the Green Bay Packers and they're going to be needing to throw the ball late. A couple of the other things that stood out to me, the Giants-Dallas game also has a pretty high spread. I think you can definitely look at some of the wide receivers on the Giants. One guy who I like is going to be Victor Cruz. Now, remember, Cruz was out all of last year, and his price over on DraftKings is right around $5,000. You're not going to find too many guys at that price that have explosive upside. Again, with the season not having started, there may be some guys who get hurt in the preseason that open up some value for us. But as I was looking over it now, I really didn't see too many of those guys that make sense. What I am going to be doing on opening weekend is looking for some cheap running back options. You have guys like a Chris Ivory, guys like a Latavius Murray, even maybe an Alfred Blue who's going to be starting in place of Arian Foster after he went down with an injury. You also have a couple rookies who might be getting in there and a couple guys who might be sneaking in there based on some injuries that we've already seen start to pop up in the preseason. A guy like Anton Smith with the Atlanta Falcons is someone to keep an eye on. He has big home run potential and a really cheap price. Depending on how Tevin Coleman comes back from his minor injury, you could see a lot of Anton Smith carries in the first week, and the explosiveness that he has and the price that he has would make him somebody that you have to have in your roster. At the tight end spot, I've also been looking to pay down a little bit so far. With the injury to a guy like Antonio Gates, you're going to have somebody like, Ladarius Green, who might be an option. Also, Austin Seferian-Jenkins is another name I've heard bandied about. And you also have a lot of rookies and second-year guys who are starting to make a name for themselves. Guys like Eric Ebron should be a bigger part of the offense this year. Tyler Eifert, somebody who a lot of good things are coming out about him from camp. So I think that this is another spot where you can look to find some cheap guys to put in your roster. I will be paying up at wide receiver, whether I use Matt Ryan or I use Jay Cutler at quarterback. I think you could use both of their receivers, guys like Julio Jones, guys like Alshon Jeffries, maybe even a guy like Roddy White. All those guys make sense to me as guys to link together with those quarterbacks or to use one way or another in those high-scoring games. A guy like Des Bryant or even an Odell Beckham in that Giants and Dallas game are other guys who you can put in there. But remember, you're only going to be able to fit one, maybe two of these guys in your roster. So you're going to have to find some cheap options too. It's a little bit too early to know where the cheap options are going to come from. But as the preseason goes on and you see some injuries and some, position battles shake out, I'm sure there'll be a few guys that are going to be pretty obvious to use on the first week of the season. So that's been a quick preview of DraftKings Week 1. I started making my Millie Maker rosters, and these are some of the guys that I had put in there. Obviously, there's a lot of time between now and the first kickoff, so some things may change between now and then. Make sure to come back to rotocurve.com as we'll be bringing you advice like this all season long. Thank you, and as always, stay classy, DFS.